All full moons are going to show us the peak of the light of the lunar cycle. We're going to have access to more of the story. But for this full moon in Aquarius, it has me asking, what secrets are being revealed to us? Or perhaps what information is being revealed to us at this time? What did you think the story was about in January of 2025? How different is it now? How about April of 2020? Where might there be information about our reality that we can't turn away from for some reason? And how might it begin to shift how we take care of ourselves and those around us? Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Victoria of Estrellita Royalty Astrology. In this show, we make meaning with the ancient archetypal language of the stars with a current focus on lunar cycles. We'll use this ancient language to see where it can offer us insight to our lives lived here on the ground. So let's get into it. Before we talk about this lunar storyline, we're going to locate ourselves in Aquarian energy. I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about Aquarian energy, and then we'll close out talking about the specifics of this chart, this full moon chart. So again, locating ourselves in Aquarian energy. Aquarian energy is of the air element, the mind, the intellect. Unlike the other air signs, Gemini and Libra, it is more spacious and expansive. Gemini would be more interested in all information, more of like a local space. Small details, large details, any and all of it. Libra, ruled by Venus, concerns itself with relationship dynamics and group harmony. I was listening to I didn't listen to the whole thing, but the over 3-hour-long episode of the Astrology podcast on the Aquarian Archetype. And astrologer Bear River talked about how Aquarian energy can encompass the past 7 generations and the future 7 generations. In this sense, Aquarius is expansive, even ancestral, though tends to be looking to the future and the idealism of the future, not just tomorrow, but generations to come tomorrow. In that same talk on the Aquarian Archetype, another astrologer explained that it could be thought of as a big hard rock floating through the sky. This example of Aquarian energy made me laugh because I think it really works, right? It's like Aquarius is a fixed energy, where that would be that rock floating through the sky, concerned with ideas, ideologies that can dream, right? Dream up a better world. And I think that rock floating through the sky image captures both the seriousness and somehow whimsy of the sign Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. Think structure, discipline, society. In this sense, Aquarius can be more academic than the other air signs. And while they are all connected with the mind, Aquarius is the most connected to ideas and how they connect us to humanity. Because of this, the Aquarian archetype can manifest as revolutionary and wanting their ideas to create a more ideal society. And also in the vein of Saturn, deeply committed to those ideas, understanding too that committing to ideas and seeing them play out requires study, reading, writing, discipline, and community. Idealism through ideas. That said, Aquarian can also be detached in service of that idealism, in service of equality, in service of humanity, even in service of objectivity, though notoriously not the warm and fuzzy type. We see the counterpart energy in Leo, who, ruled by the sun, can warm up any space interpersonally, though may not have Aquarian's objectivity or collective visionary qualities. As I was preparing this episode, I was saddened to see that Denise Oliver Velez, one of the original members of the Young Lords and Black Panther Party in New York, passed away on July 15th, 2026. Denise was involved in many movements, but I happened to learn about her through my reading about the Young Lords. When I think about Aquarian energy, I absolutely think about social movements like the Young Lords and the Black Panthers, and committed leaders as well, and or members of those social movements like Denise. Groups that were motivated by creating a more just society for everyone. In Joanna Fernandez's book, The Young Lords, A Radical History, she recounts how the Young Lords got their start by knocking on doors in Spanish Harlem and asking the community what they needed. The biggest ask was unglamorous for a revolutionary group. The neighborhood wanted the garbage picked up regularly. The city of New York wasn't picking up the garbage north of 96th Street, and a largely Black American and Puerto Rican neighborhood was looking to get a basic need met. The young lord showed up every day to clean the streets because that's what the neighbors said they wanted. And eventually other neighbors who saw they were committed committed to following through. They also joined in. But because the city still didn't pick up the trash, eventually the young lords launched what they called the garbage offensive, where they gathered the accumulated trash, put it in the middle of the street, and burned it. Of course, the city eventually picked up the trash. The young lords also took over a hospital in the Bronx for its unsanitary conditions and inspired what we now know as a Patient's Bill of Rights. And like the Black Panthers, ran free community education centers for youth as well as feeding them, which also later inspired our nationwide free breakfast program. The thing is this community care work was risky and it required disrupting the status quo and power structures in place. So it also required discipline and strategy and commitment. It required an ideology and a vision and a deep belief of collective love, respect, and dignity for all communities, not just those who have money or some kind of political access. So back to Denise Oliver Velez, who was a member of both the Black Panthers and Young Lords. Later, she became a professor at SUNY New Paltz and also contributed to the publication The Daily Cause. I want to share with you what one of the staff writers who wrote about her on the day that she passed away. Note, I don't know if this is the main editor. I couldn't tell. It just said staff writer, but I was moved by what he wrote. So this is what he says. I make my living writing words, and yet I am at a loss. There's a big hole inside me. I can feel it, almost see it. But as I've sat with that grief, I've realized something unexpected. Our beloved Denise may be gone, but somehow she also isn't. For literal decades, every difficult decision about the direction of the Daily Cause has included the same question. What is Denise going to think about this? Denise has been the voice in the back of my mind, advising me, guiding me, oftentimes scolding me. If I was going to ignore what I knew Denise would tell me, I had better have a damn good reason. The depth of her experience gave her a level of wisdom that is almost unfathomable. As Anna Mastic wrote so perfectly, how do you shrink the life of a lifelong activist, a member of the Young Lords and Black Panthers, a brilliant writer, an editor, a musicologist, a cultural anthropologist, a priestess of Yamaya and the Afro-Cuban Lukumi Odisha tradition, a paradigm breaker and shaper, to fit onto a page? How lucky I was to draw from that vast store of experience, forged in battles most of us know only through history books. What that experience gave Denise was something rare, moral clarity. She knew who she was, she knew what she believed, and she never hesitated to tell me or anyone else when she thought we'd gotten it wrong. I may not have always been thrilled to hear it, but I was always grateful. I know I wasn't alone. The community knew that side of Denise too. She could be relentless in an argument. She could ruffle feathers, but her convictions were never performative. They were earned over a lifetime spent fighting for justice, and she expected the rest of us to live up to those same standards. So all of this, reading what the staff writer wrote in her honor, absolutely embodies this Aquarian energy, right? Even going back to what the astrologer Bear River referenced, 7 generations in the past, 7 generations in the future, right? Her becoming a priestess of Yamaya in the Lukumi, Afro-Cuban Lukumi tradition is an example of that, right? Like a complete devotion and reverence both to her ancestors and where she comes from, like turning it into a literal practice, but then also this practice of fighting for the 7 generations in the future and being committed to that ideology and way of being that will further our collective humanity. Not only did Denise pass away in the lead up to this full moon and some of the astrology happening right now, but her birthday is on August 1st, just 2 days after this full moon, 2 or 3, excuse me. When I looked up her birthday, right, I don't know her exact time of birth, but I can look up her birthday and see the chart of that day. I can see that she was born under a Mars and Uranus conjunction in Gemini, a signature that is occurring right now in our sky. That if you think about it, right, it's Mars, the planet of action, taking action and making moves through Gemini, which is connected to communication. So how we think, how we communicate, and how that will impact how we make moves in the world, right? And then paired with Uranus, it might be unexpected, and it might be for liberation or revolutionary qualities that are associated with Uranus. So that seems so emblematic of what we know about her. I didn't know her personally, but what I've learned about through reading about her and also through hearing her in interviews. This all makes me think of the book I referenced in my last episode by Bell Hooks, All About Love, where she considers how important it is for us to recognize the definition of love so that we can create the conditions of a loving society. Okay, so I'm now going to locate us. We're going to now talk about this exact full moon in Aquarius and the chart of it, now that we're grounded in Aquarian energy. So to locate us in the storyline in a larger moon cycle, we planted something at the new moon in Aquarius on January 29th, 2025 at 9 degrees Aquarius. October of last year, we shifted gears and started to see what needed to fall away and what wasn't going to work for whatever we had seeded. And by now, at the full moon, we should see things for what they are, but we might be maybe overwhelmed with some information. There are a lot of possibilities at this time, and those possibilities might feel or look very different from January or even October of last year. What is this full moon revealing to you about your own sense of belonging to a larger collective? Perhaps belonging to 7 generations past and 7 generations in the future. Ideally, it's an aha moment that feels liberating, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's hard stuff that we have to deal with on the road to figuring out how to love and take care of one another in an ongoing community sense. The Sun and Jupiter together here are also seeding their own cycle, and perhaps this is positive. When we hear the term joy is resistance, right? Like we can't restructure or build something closer to our dreams without making room for expansiveness, for learning and growth, and for vitality. Yes, we need to be objective and committed to Aquarian idealism, but yes, laugh and have fun with our communities. I also need this reminder to take the rest, right? To stay committed to my ethics and values and think about collective love values. How do we love our neighbors? How do we love our block? And to remember Bell Hooks' question, if we don't know what love is, how will we know we have a loving society? How can we contribute to one if we don't know what it is? The full moon rules Mercury, as Mercury is in Cancer, the home sign of the moon. Mercury continues to play a part in all of these lunations, right? Because Cancer energy rules the moon. And she spent a bit longer than normal in Cancer because of this summer of Mercury in retrograde in Cancer. Mercury is also something we call in astrology the bound ruler of the moon and Pluto at 6 degrees of Aquarius. So there's something informational, communicative about the moon and Pluto here. I've been talking a lot, right, in these last few episodes about Mercury and Cancer, having us revisit and rethink our connection to care and how we communicate care in our life. So, of course, in Aquarius makes me think of this more on a humanitarian level. It makes me think there is information to share, to reveal, or there's a powerful moment to be unearthed here about what we are learning right now and what we are seeing. As Pluto can be connected to power, right, in Aquarius, I'm thinking ideologies of power and domination, and also, of course, ideologies of empowerment, of larger collectives and genuine community care. Pluto can also rule obsession and obsessing about those things that we don't always have language for, repressed emotions, feelings, and thoughts. This information could be empowering or unsettling. But generally, the idea of Pluto, right, is hiding whatever we hide and stuff down. It comes out through Pluto. Mercury is at 17 degrees. It was last at 17 degrees of Cancer on these dates, June 18th, 2025, so a year ago, just recently last month, June 14th, 2026, and July 18th and July 19th of this past month. And so could those dates offer us some clues about the information that is being revealed to us or the kinds of things that are on our mind right now connected to these collective themes? In this chart, Mercury is a square with Saturn, and Saturn's actually the ruler of this full moon. Is Mercury coming back to or coming into awareness of some kind of limitation, an external hurdle, as symbolized by Saturn? This could be information that has been brewing for a while with Saturn connected to time, but again is finally crystallizing in the way it is coming into our awareness. Finally, Jupiter and Pluto are in an opposition, which is part of their own cycle that had their seeding moment several times in 2020. When two planets come together in a conjunction, just like the moon and the sun, that's a new moon, it follows a similar cycle as that of a lunar cycle where planets come together, seed something at that moment. And in their opposition is where we can see things for what they are, right? Like a full moon moment when the sun and moon are finally opposite each other as a full moon. So in this case, Jupiter and Pluto came together in 2020, and they're finally in an exact opposition in this full moon chart. So in any case, the Jupiter and Pluto conjunction aligned with the pandemic. And that, of course, was a new era for so many of us. With some perspective on that time period, what do you think you were seeing at that moment that might connect to being able to see something now? Like maybe the pandemic had you change careers, move. Where are you now? Or having had made those changes? Or maybe they were smaller changes, right? Like you started a project or began a course of study. Where are you at with this now? With this full moon at 6 Aquarius, now conjunct Pluto, is also where are you living with an awareness of your mortality, but also ideally your power. Sometimes our own power can scare us. So it could be something connected to that, but maybe it's not, maybe it's positive. But also with the opposition to the Sun and Jupiter, it maybe gives this all a boost in a belief and understanding of why we are here right now. A nod to yes, we are mortal, but we are here now. We are alive. How are we alive and living out and offering meaning through our life, even if in the smallest of ways that aligns with our own sense of ethics, values, and collective love. And all about love, I'm going to probably keep referencing it all summer, Hooks also speaks of nihilism and how that creeps in for many of us. And when it does, it makes us feel disempowered when we witness a society that is unloving. But it does start with us, right? And in some ways, I think referencing inspiring people like Denise and movements like the Black Panthers and the Young Lords who were living among us, who challenged the status quo when things were hard and continue to be hard, can be part of a practice to remind ourselves that we don't have to give up on ourselves or each other when we invariably feel tired or defeated or down. And I reference these movements from the late 60s, early 70s. Of course, there's many things happening now. I think just sometimes history gives us enough of space to see something. In hindsight, the 2020 is hindsight, or hindsight is 2020, right? We can see things clearer. So that's kind of why I like referencing movements from a while ago. Another reason I fuck with astrology is that it reminds me that there are cycles to everything, right? This helps me with offering myself more grace for when I need to turn within. Another interesting piece of the Jupiter-Pluto opposition as part of the pandemic signature from 2020 is that 6 years later, now with Pluto fully in Aquarius, Pluto fully in an air sign, is that we are now seeing we're seeing repeats of airborne illnesses at this time. In New York City, there has been Legionnaires. We also keep seeing Cyclospora, I think I'm saying that right. And of course, the wildfires, which are having a severe impact on the air quality here in New York and many other parts of the Northeast, as well as, of course, the Midwest states that are closer to bordering Canada. So yes, the Sun and Jupiter coming together with hope and optimism and generous, warm-hearted Leo wanting to warm up community with joy and belief and faith, being opposed by the Moon in Aquarius and Pluto being like, girl, not so fast. I feel like this meme from Overheard in New York appropriately sums it up. With that, we're going to close out our show for this full moon in Aquarius at 6 degrees. The one question I am pondering from all of this astrology comes from what the staff writer at the Daily Cause mentioned about Denise Oliver Velez and her unrelenting, non-performative moral clarity that seemed to carry her throughout her life. Where and when do we have moral clarity? And how can we live in a way that sustains our commitment to that moral clarity? Rest in power, Denise. Wishing you all a meaningful full moon. Feel free to share what the full moon is revealing to you in your full moon cycle. If you weren't sure where the full moon hits in your chart, share your rising sign in the comments and I'll let you know what the house themes are to look out for. If you would like a more in-depth look at your chart, head over to estrellitaroyalty.com to book a reading with me. Of course, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Like, subscribe, all of that is so helpful as we build Estrellita Royalty out as a place to make meaning with the ancient archetypal language of the stars. As always, mucho, mucho, mucho amor. Bye.